speaking of intervals, let's talk about them for a second, because here's the problem. You get intervals, for example, a reference range with lab values. They'll give you a little parentheses next to the number and they'll tell you what normal is, but they don't do that for the EKG. So what I did was I made you a little cheat sheet, and looking at these numbers, these line up prospectively to each number. So for example, let's go through these together. This is the ventricular rate, which is also known as the heart rate. And this should be between 60 and 100 beats per minute. This is something we all know, but it's just nice to see the reference range here. The next thing is the PR interval. That's the time it takes for the impulse to go from the atrium down to the AV node. The next line down is the PR interval, and that should be anywhere from 120 to 200 milliseconds. So looking at this, with it being 150, it is between 120 and 200. So that's a normal PR interval. This can be helpful when you have a Wolff-Parkinson's-White patient. If this is short, less than 120, you have to alert your brain to go back into the EKG and look specifically for delta waves that are associated with Wolff-Parkinson's-White. So this is just one way those intervals are helpful. The next line down is the Qrs Duration, and that's 76. It should be below or less than 120. And you can see when you look at it that it will be skinny. So the DAD is very skinny, and that's what we want. This being 76, that's normal, right? Because it's less than 120. The next line down is the QTC. That is the corrected QT interval. That number is 446, which is normal because it should be less than 460. Anytime it's over 460, that's technically prolonged, and you want to watch out for things like torsades. And then finally, the next line down is the Prt Axis, and 51 here, this is actually normal, because normal axis is between 0 and 90. Now, if you look at this here, this is clearly saying it's a Wolff-Parkinson's-White, which we have to look out for delta waves here, right? So let's go into the EKG and let's do that. So you can clearly see that there's delta waves here, and that's what they look like. There's a nice upstroke or slurring of the QRS complex. You can see it in multiple leads here. And that's just happening because there's an accessory tract that goes from the sinus node to the ventricles. So it makes a slur because it's not going through the AV node where things normally go. And like I just said, there's some clues here. And the clue here is that you have a PR interval of 88. And as we saw, anything under 120 is short, and short PR interval will have to worry about Wolff-Parkinson's-White.